Welcome back to the Anti-Meta Meta Club. This week's Race C is a Group 4 sprint on hard tires, which means the all-wheel drive cars have a massive advantage. However, I have a rear-wheel drive alternative for you. Let's get into it. Your anti-meta car of the week is the Jag once again. This race is absolutely dominated by all-wheel drive cars, and in fact, the top 100 only features 5 cars that are not all-wheel drive. 4 of those cars are mid-engine, and this is the only FR car in the top 100 as of right now. So we've come full circle, and just like when I first started this series, the all-wheel drive cars are dominating Group 4, at the very least when it comes to hard tires. The Huracan is meta, with the Lancer not that far behind, and there are 4 NSXs in the top 100, but I managed to put the only FR, the Jag, in the top 100. I'm certain there will be others if anyone else cares to try. As you start your lap, you're going to look for the end of the grass here on the left. What you want to do is wait until the entirety of your car is all the way past the grass, and that is when you're going to start braking. Never getting to full brake, you're going to downshift to 5th immediately as you turn in, continue trail braking down to 4th gear, and of course continue adding steering all the way till you get to the apex. Continue steering in as you gently add throttle, and then of course straighten out the wheel as needed, making sure that you don't go all the way to the left, but you also don't need to go all the way to the right. Middle of the track is just fine. Turn in early and try to aim for the beginning of the curb here on the left. You want to ride all the way on top of it. Please take note that as I'm lifting off the throttle, I'm not lifting off entirely, still trying to keep up as much momentum as I can just to aim the car onto the curb. When both of your left tires are on the curb, then you can add brakes, but note that I am not going full brake until I neutralize the steering. I'm adding just a little bit more until the steering's fully neutralized, and then I brake fully, just briefly. At the end of the curb, you're going to turn in and trail brake in 3rd gear. Now take a look at this curb. You'll notice that there's an inner portion that's all yellow and an outer portion that's blue and yellow, and as long as your left tires are touching the blue and yellow part, you're not going to get a penalty. However, it's better to completely miss that part with your left tires. As you can see, it made my car jump and it upset the balance, but I was able to just counter steer and I kept up my momentum somehow. If you miss it, you can take that exact same line. Continue turning left, aiming for this curb here in the distance, but before you get there, about half a car length away, you want to change the direction of the car. Gently, but make sure you continue adding steering as you get into the corner so you can go all the way up on this curb. Now, I touched the grass here. I think it's okay if you just touch it briefly, but if you go all the way in the grass, you're going to get dirty tires and you do not want that. A little bit before the halfway mark of this curb here on the right, it kind of straightens out, right about here. And right when you get all the way on it, when both of your right tires are on it, is when you want to hit the brakes, avoiding the grass. My goal is to come off the curb entirely before the final blue sector of it. When you do, you're going to be in 3rd gear, trail braking in, and it's okay if you touch the grass just a little bit, kind of like the previous time when I touched the grass, but if you go all the way in the grass, if you get 2 tires in the grass, I believe that's what causes dirty tires. As you gently add throttle, I want you to take note of the curbing here on the right. You can notice that there's a thin strip of curbing that's about the size of normal curbing, and it's closest to the track. As long as your left tires are still touching that, you can actually go all the way up in the curbing, and I encourage it. You need to get back on the track before the white line, and shifting to 4th gear before you get on there can help stabilize the car, but of course, be ready to countersteer. Hidden on the barrier to the left is this 300-foot sign, and right when you get all the way past it, when the back end of your car is past that, that is when you're going to start to brake. Trail brake in 4th gear after you go over the white line, keeping your momentum up, and then downshift to 3rd right before you hit the curb and back on the throttle, continuing to steer because you can understeer pretty heavily here. Looking for this crack right here at the end of it, right where I put the arrow, you're going to hit the brakes, and it's totally fine if your left tires are on the curb as long as they're not on the grass. Once again, turning in before you hit the final blue sector of the curb on the outside, you're going to hit this blue mark of the curb on the inside and gently get on the throttle. As soon as the tires are hooked up, you want to get fully on the throttle and of course countersteer if you get any kind of oversteer. You want to definitely avoid all of the dirt and all of the grass on the outside because those can really destroy your momentum. Look up at the map and you'll notice that there's just a slight kink on this straight here. You want to just try to go in a straight line as much as you can, and don't rev this car out too much because it will actually lose momentum on the straight. Looking for the 200-foot board here on the right. Once your rear bumper is all the way past it, that's when you're going to hit the brakes, and take note that I'm actually aiming so my right tires are on this curb right here before I turn in. Turn in right at the beginning of that curb, downshift to 2nd as you trail brake, and try to get as much over that curb as you can. You're going to be in 2nd gear before lifting briefly, upshifting to 3rd, and then trying to hit that inside apex, then staying fully on the throttle. If you're sliding at all and you hit this outside curb, it's going to be a disaster, so make sure you hook up those tires. You also don't actually have to go super wide in this corner because the car isn't quite fast enough to necessitate it. In one of the last few updates, one really big change that we've found is that you can get tires individually dirty. Or maybe not individually, you can get at least one side of your car dirty when it comes to dirty tires. You used to be able to go all the way in the grass and not have to worry about it unless all 4 tires hit the grass. But now you can actually get asymmetrical dirty tires, which is pretty cool because the way that you could abuse this course specifically was really obnoxious. So it's really nice being able to see that you have to be at least a little bit more grounded in reality when you're lapping here. I think this car is actually probably capable of a 23, and I chose this car because it doesn't handle quite as well as the NSX, but it is good enough, and it does seem a bit more powerful when it comes to passing the meta cars on this straight right here. I also just really like the balance of FR cars. When they get really loose, it's pretty easy for me to catch them, and I think it's pretty much the same for most people. FR cars are a little bit easier to catch when they get a little crazy. Group 4 cars are really fun right now because with the current physics, you can get these cars to oversteer and understeer with throttle and with braking. And so you can be pretty creative. You can see that in the race that I did, I actually had to induce some oversteer to ensure a pass going to this left-handed corner. And so I'm just really happy with the ability to play around with the balance of the cars and with sliding them just a little bit as you need. I don't think what I said helped too much with the lap, but I think that most of you are probably watching this lap without even listening to me just to make sure that you get the correct lines. For reasons that will certainly always elude me, there is absolutely no strategy required in this race whatsoever. The tire wear isn't high enough for anything to happen. In fact, I don't think we're even using a multiplier, which is pretty crazy for a 14-lap race. And there's no pit stop, no required tire changes or anything, no fuel. It's really just a 14-lap sprint. Now, with that said, it can still be pretty fun, but when you have one really dominant car, that isn't quite as fun. So here I am with some anti-meta choices for you. Besides the Jag, I've talked about the NSX. The NSX is really good. Pretty much all of the other all-wheel drive cars are also really good. And I think the Viper in the right hands is almost as good as the Jaguar as well. Now, I guess I misspoke. I said there's no strategy necessary or even available, but in reality, anytime you're racing, there is always some kind of strategy that you can employ to best your opponents. That strategy comes in the form of where you position your car, when you choose to overtake cars, when you choose not to overtake cars, and of course with bump drafting and that sort of thing. Now, usually in these races, I like to start from the back because I think it's important to show what this car can do while attacking, defending, and when you have to do both of them. I had such a terrible first race, though, that I decided I was going to set a time, and hopefully people at the back of the race, when I pull over, would see that I have the ability, I have the pace to be up towards the front, and maybe it would be a deterrent against making really crazy moves. I had even considered making a video of the previous race that I had because I raced against people whose qualifying times were 3 or 4 seconds off the pace, who were going for a pass every single corner, despite the fact that they were multiple seconds behind. It was incredible. It was crazy. It was shocking. I couldn't believe that the top split drivers were driving like this. But at the end of the day, I didn't think that was going to be a great video just showing me having a bad attitude about people who were driving bad. So instead, I just set a lap and hope for the best, and it ended up immediately being better this time. End of rant. Trying to move on from the rant itself, it is actually really important to discuss the fact that when you are very clearly slower than someone who is racing with you, it's not going to help anyone. It's not going to help you. It's not going to help them, despite the fact you obviously wouldn't want to help your opponent, but it's not going to help you whatsoever to constantly try to make moves on people who are very obviously faster. Now, it might be difficult to determine who's faster, but in a situation where you're racing and you are with a pack and someone approaches you very quickly, and they're able to get in front of you very quickly, very easily, it probably stands to reason that they are a faster driver than you. And in that situation, if you can work with them or just try to stay within their slipstream as they make moves, then you can potentially benefit from that. But if you try to battle someone who's very obviously much faster than you, it's only going to slow you down, and it's going to make it so you potentially lose more positions than just that one. Now, I should have been more careful in that last corner, but it wasn't too bad, and I didn't actually lose a position. And in fact, it did set me up to pass this guy. But when you see people going too wide in turn 3, it's almost never going to end up okay, and it's definitely not going to be okay to go 3 wide. Even if I wasn't the one to get pushed off, someone would probably get pushed off if we went 3 wide, and so really it's going to benefit everyone else if you're just patient and you wait behind and wait for an opportunity to pass. That is another thing to think about strategy-wise. Just because a pass is available doesn't mean it's the best time to do it. In fact, if I had passed that guy just a little bit later, he would probably still be close enough that he'd have my slipstream and would be able to be in a good position to put a move on me going into this place. You never really want to pass people right before a straight. If you have the ability to pass someone before a straight, then you've got the ability to pass them after the straight. And if you set yourself up for a good exit going into the straight right behind him, you can use your slipstream to get an even better chance at passing them. An unfortunate reality of this track is the penalty system is going to punish you. Now, you've got to really push the limits of the track. It's really up to a driver to push the limits, the track limits, in order to find exactly what you can get away with. But when doing so at this track, it's really easy for the track to punish you. And so a lot of people are going to end up with penalties here. Now, when choosing whether or not to pass someone with a penalty, I didn't even want to make a move on that guy if I could before that straight, because if he's going to have to pause there, if he's going to have to ghost and slow down, it would actually benefit me to bump draft him, go extra fast, use his slipstream, and then pass him while he's a ghost. So if you're following someone who's a ghost and they're not much slower than you, maybe choose not to pass them until the penalty zone so you can actually benefit and go much faster. Now, speaking of choosing when to pass people and when not to pass people, I didn't actually think I was going to be able to pass Dutchy into this corner. I mostly wanted to deter the guy from behind trying to pass me there, and then my plan was actually just to stay behind Dutchy. Now, it looks like I'm positioning myself to maybe go for a pass, but you can see that I'm checking up, I'm going slow, I'm not getting really aggressive on the throttle, and even when he makes this mistake right here, I'm still just trying to stay behind him. There's really no use trying to pass him in the S's. Despite the fact that my car is much faster, having both of these cars in the S's is not going to be good. It's going to slow us both down. Now, I just said that this car is faster. What I meant is this car is faster in the S's. It's actually slower in most of the other sections, but in the S's, this car is definitely faster. Despite that, it's not going to work out if I try to pass him in the S. So the best thing to do when working against one of these all-wheel drive cars is just try to stay behind and position yourself for a really good exit so you can pass into a braking zone. This car has really good brakes, but more importantly than that, it is extremely agile. As you can see, I'm not going to be able to get all the way in front of him, so I'm going to have to be really aggressive on the brakes. This is more of an advanced technique, but if you're watching my guide, you probably are equipped to at least try it. You can see that I'm braking hard, coming off the brakes hard, and dipping down to second gear before going up to third, and then balancing the car that's oversteering with some throttle. I had to keep up my speed and really make it known that I was passing him so that I didn't end up side by side with him, because I was certainly going to lose a side-by-side battle with him going up that hill. The all-wheel drive cars here are very powerful because of their traction partially, and so I was not going to be able to really beat him in a tight side-by-side battle like that. I also want to take a second to shout out Dutchy. Dutchy's a good guy, a really good streamer and content creator. You should definitely go follow him. Jumping forward, we didn't actually run into traffic for another 4 laps. We had a lot of time to just set laps, and I hit a 124.5. I think this car could probably do a 0.2 or a 0.3 with the right slipstream and in the right hands, so it's definitely a competitor when it comes to raw pace. When it comes to the Genesis X, which is one of the all-wheel drive cars you're probably going to be racing against, as you can see, even though it has slipstream with the Huracan, I am actually faster in the straight. So again, this is why I chose the Jag. Like I mentioned before, I'm definitely not going to beat any of the all-wheel drive cars if we go side by side, so my hope was that I was going to be able to go fast enough that I was going to be able to pull off a switcheroo and pass him on the inside, but as you can see, that all-wheel drive is very powerful, and Steve up here is a good driver, so I was not able to pull that off. Seeing that I had space, I decided I was going to try to go for an outside pass, and that was a terrible idea. I don't know if the outside is actually more slippery or if I just carried too much speed and understeered, but that outside pass just straight up did not work. I've mentioned this a couple times before, but the Jag is much better for this twisty section than any of the all-wheel drive cars, save for maybe the Huracan, but it is very fast here. Unfortunately, it is not immune to the dangers of dirty air or dirty tires, so I got a penalty there, but to my delight, Steve in front of us also got that penalty. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you to one of the dark arts of the penalty system in Gran Turismo. Once again, I slowed down a lot to get a very fast shot, to get the most acceleration as I possibly could, using his slipstream, and what's funny about the penalty system is it just makes you brake for half a second. So if you're going faster than someone else who has the exact same penalty, you can end up going straight past them, or in this situation, straight through them. And it is a benefit going straight through other ghosts if you want to risk it, because sometimes ghosts are actually solid for no reason. Most of the time they're not. So if you do choose to go into one of the ghosts, you can benefit from it, but you also might just run into them. Anyways, what happened there is I was going faster than him as we both hit the exact same penalty. And because I was going faster, the exact same amount of braking affected my top speed less, and I was able to carry more momentum through that penalty system, or penalty area. You know what? Usually I would re-record this entire thing, but I've been talking for so long, we're just going to leave this mistake in here, and you guys can laugh at me about it. Jumping to lap 12, once again we find ourselves behind someone serving a penalty on the straight, and so I decided to give him a bump draft. No matter what, I'm getting in front of this man that has a 1-second penalty, but if I bump him on that straight, it could potentially lead to me having slipstream for longer than if I just went past him, and that could benefit me overall. Jumping all the way to the final lap, I managed to get myself into 5th place, and I was poised to potentially make 1 or 2 more overtakes, but spoiler alert, I made a huge mistake. Now, it's really hard to determine what you should do. If I try to move out and pass this guy, I'm no longer going to have slipstream. He's going to have slipstream, so he's going to definitely be able to go faster than me. If I had bumped him, I might have been able to get him to go next to Magford, and they might have both slowed down, leading to an opportunity to pass. But instead, I tried to pull out, and then after that, the guy in front of me bumped Magford, which gave them both a boost. It did end up making it so they had to battle each other, but at this point I was so far behind, I had no option, nothing I could do, so all I could do was stay on the track. And in the end, it was really smart of that guy to stay behind Magford and give him that bump rather than try to defend any harder, and he did end up passing Magford and getting that podium, so that was really smart from him. I want you to learn from my mistake. If you're in that situation again, there are better things to do. When he bumped Magford, I could have slipped past him, but I was too close behind him, and I bumped him as well. And also, if I had gone to the inside instead of the outside, I might have been able to pull something off. But either way, it was a good race. I was happy to reclaim 5th, and despite the fact that this is a sprint, it is actually quite a bit of fun when you have good people to race against. Thank you for watching, and if you liked what you saw, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I will be leaving you with a look at my current members. I love every single one of you. Thank you very much.